And it's Mike O'Neill in for the Mike and Mike Off-Air podcast. I am right here.
And Mike Pesto over here. And, of course, thanks to everyone who decides to watch on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. We love when you do that. And, of course, listen online at my975fm.com. Usually have the links up on Facebook as well. So many places you could check this out now. There's really no excuse for this being your first one. But if it is, thank you for checking it out.
Indeed. And before we move any forward, I want to know how you did last night at Angry Comedy Night.
Well, see, let me back up a little bit and kind of set the whole stage. So we know what happened with George Lopez. There's still a poll question up, by the way, at my975fm.com, and I want to ask you about this.
Yeah.
I've been racking my brain with it. I can't think of a time I've ever been to a concert or a show, anything like that at some point it stopped abruptly. Maybe something in the audience caused it, maybe something on stage, maybe it was a weather issue, and as you're thinking of one, we will circle back to that, I promise. So there's a poll question up because George Lopez, famously now, and this got international news, which surprised me, ended his set halfway through because people were yelling out positives to him in Eagle Mountain Casino.
Yeah.
So the poll question is up asking if you've ever been to a concert or show that was abruptly stopped for whatever reason. So if I say Rawhide decided to do Angry Comedian Night to kind of capitalize on it. Brilliant move on their part, by the way. And one thing I didn't know until I talked with Joe Ross, they worked with the Eagle Mountain Casino on this. Someone at the game last night for showing up, buying their ticket, won a $1,000 Eagle Mountain Casino prize basket, including dinner at the steakhouse there, which is incredible, may I tell you.
Yeah, good food.
Crazy
good.
Tickets for a show, I believe a night stay as well. I mean, a $1,000 basket was given out thanks to Eagle Mountain Casino and the Rawhide.
That is smart marketing right there.
And they kind of toyed around with this idea of having people do stand-up comedy in between the innings. And then they realized they've got 90 seconds, 2 minutes tops. Who's going to actually want to do this? Well, I reached out to Joe Ross. I said, hey, if you were serious about that, I kind of did, and we talked about this briefly. I did a set on the Las Vegas Strip once. I set up the guy who opened for Bill Engvall when I worked for a country station there. I thought, you know what? I would have been happy if that had been my one and only experience. How many people can say that? Your one and only stand-up experience is on the Strip in Las Vegas. But I thought, you know what? I'll give this a shot. And I did my just south of 2-minute bit. And if you're curious to see it and hear it, it's up on our Facebook page right now, facebook.com/my975. You can judge it for yourself.
I checked it. It went pretty good. But 2 minutes, you really don't even get going. But you got some stuff in.
And as I mentioned to you before we got started, that people are there for a baseball game. They're not there to see some guy at some radio station they may or may not have even heard of try to entertain them for 90 seconds while they're cheering on the Rawhide. And they were losing at that point, too. So you have some disgruntled fans sitting close by. Get this guy up so we can watch this team lose.
I can see me in left field. Hey, is it time to sing Tipper's favorite song already? Oh, yeah.
So I thought it went well. I prayed. My daughter was sick and tired of it because I rehearsed ahead of time, like 90 seconds at a time with her, trying to remember all the little bits I did. I did a little impersonation of Forrest Gump at one point and then impersonated a couple other things. So I got all that stuff in the routine. It got to the point where she wasn't even laughing anymore. I'm like, this isn't very good. I'm like, Daddy, I've heard this 15 times now. It's just not funny anymore. It was funny the first couple times. I'm like, okay, I'll roll with that then.
Well, it's all about the timing, isn't it? It seemed like it went pretty well indeed. Well, I think we talked a little about this once before, but in light of Governor Newsom saying he's planning to build on the law he signed in 2019 that authorized school districts to limit or ban the use of smartphones by students while at school or under the supervision of a school employee, I think it sheds a different kind of light on cell phones for kids. When is it appropriate? I mean, and what I mean by the different light, we started, I mean, Mike and I are different ages. I'm 66 and a half. And when I was grappling with this was back in 2005, 2006. And There were no iPhones then. We had giant HP phones that looked like little tablets. And we got for Kelly, my 4.0 student, who was, I think, in second or third grade, we got her a little Firefly. Do you remember those?
I don't.
It's a little phone that was kind of round and long, and Mom and Dad could program in 10 numbers, and there were 10 buttons,
Okay.
and 911. And the phone, she could pick up anyone that called her, and she could only make calls out to those.
Now, did that predate the Nokia 51, whatever it was? Because that was the first smaller size cell phone that I remember. That I had, and everyone had one, kind of like the iPhones now. It was a Nokia 51 something or other. Did that predate those?
Well, it was specifically made for kids. That's why it was called a Firefly.
Okay, but I'm just asking time frame wise.
I honestly can't remember. I do
Okay.
know that 2005, 2006 is when we were doing this with the Firefly.
Okay.
I don't know much about Nokias because I almost exclusively had an iPhone straight through once they became available. But I mean,
So you had nothing before, like the Razor. You never had a Razor.
my very first iPhone was the iPhone. The very first
So
iPhone.
the first mobile phone you ever had was an iPhone.
No, okay, that's true. Okay, I got confused. No, my very first phone was a weird-looking Sony Ericsson. It was about this big, and it did sort of open,
Okay.
and it had a browser, if you can call it that.
Really? Wow.
It had data. You could log on
Okay.
and, where bees. Oh, there's information, and it had very basic information, and I felt very modern at the time.
Yeah, the Nokia. It had one game on it. It had the snake game where
Yeah.
it was a snake and you had to gobble up these little pellets without accidentally hitting yourself. And as you gobbled up a pellet, the snake got a little longer.
Yeah.
And it was just dot matrix. It was up, down, left, right. And you
Yeah.
just kind of negotiate around the screen. That was the one, as far as I remember, and only game the Nokia had. So it was a phone. Period. Full stop.
Oh yeah, and that's all. That's all. That's really all this was. Although it did have that browser, and it made me feel fancy, but I really couldn't do like right now. You can get on your iPhone, and I mean, you can surf the web on that just as well as you can on anything else in the world. We had that. We went right to these these HP things we had for a couple of series, and then the iPhone came out, and I still have that in my sock drawer, by the way.
Interesting.
Just a little iPhone, and then I have had an iPhone. Every other my turn because me first, then Colleen, then me, and right along we just got our 15s, and so I was sworn over to the dark side immediately and commensurately. But for us, it's a different question. I mean, appropriate was the question back in 2005. She was my 4.0 student. She was a good girl. She didn't do silly, crazy things. And so it was just a lifeline for us to know where she was. She felt confident. She had a little anxiety, and it made her feel comfortable that if she was somewhere and she needed to call for help right now, that she could. And so she had that phone. Well, today, my heart goes out to teachers. I mean, can you imagine being a teacher in a classroom full of 30 students? You've passionately put together this presentation, and as you look out on your class, 25 out of 30 of them are all surfing the web, texting someone else, doing anything and everything on their phone other than taking in what it is you're doing.
Now, have you talked with teachers to know that is actually what is happening?
That's the thing that happens.
Really? I
and-
did not realize it had gotten that bad. My son is going to Mount Whitney now as a freshman there, and I need to ask him about that because he has not expressed that to me, but it may just be something he's just so used to at this point. It's, yeah, I went to class. Yeah, of course that happens. But yeah, I had no idea.
And the other thing is, I mean, with school shootings, I'm not so. Then my heart doesn't go out to the teacher so much anymore. I'm more, how do I get a hold of my kid if there's a lockdown? My kids are all out of school now, but in that situation, if there's a lockdown or if something or goes awry, wouldn't you want to feel like you could contact your son or daughter right now?
I would. Here's my fear, because I famously, ask anyone who knows me well, overanalyzes every situation to a fault. I would want to, if the school was giving updates, I would probably just rely on that because my fear is my son has his phone off mute, is hiding somewhere in a classroom.
Oh.
I call him, his phone rings, whoever it is that's the bad guy hears, there's a phone ringing over here, there must be at least one student, bang, bang.
Target opportunity.
And then I'm thinking, again, I've got a very good very good visual on things too. I'm envisioning that situation and then knowing for the rest of my life, because of my concern and doing before thinking of all the ramifications tied to it, that's what happened. So if the school had something set up where, hey, this is the situation, please check here for all the details, I would probably do that and encourage my wife to do the same because I would be thinking about that rare, but I'm sure it has maybe sometimes happened, situation.
And with the phones so incredibly agile now, I mean, you could send whole entire files. You can, I mean, what can't you do on a phone now? Today's phones with cameras, you can send pictures.
Yep.
And receive pictures. I mean, that's something that kids could do now. Browsers, obviously, they can go and check out just anything they want to in the whole world. Social media is a whole entire thing unto itself. In fact, the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, recently argued that they were fueling a mental health crisis among adolescents, saying adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depressive symptoms. And the average daily use in that age group as of the summer of 2023 was 4.8 hours. And that just increases. I mean, these are things we didn't have to think of back then because there was no OnlyFans. There was no...
Well, I hope my kids aren't going on OnlyFans.
going on or uploading. But, of course, your kids aren't. But we didn't even have to think about this stuff in 2005. It wasn't even an issue. I mean, the worst trouble I could get in when I was in high school is my mouth would open and I would say something I would regret. The end. I mean, we didn't have phone. I don't know. It's a whole new thing. I don't envy the potential of the options that young parents have now. I mean, it's a little harder now.
You have to be 24/7, 365, a very active parent.
Yeah.
Passive parenting, I think it's tough because you need to parent, you need to protect, you need to do all those things, but you also need to prepare your kids for the world in which we live in today.
Foster individuality.
And this is the world we live in today.
Yeah.
And I just want to circle back to one thing that you were talking about in case there's an emergency situation at school. This is a great, if you're listening to this podcast, you're watching on YouTube, have the conversation with your kids so that they understand, hey, in a situation like this, tell them if you are going to call. If you're not going to, if you expect to hear from them, make sure that they reach out to you with, like you said, video or a text or something. Like you do fire drills at home. We used to do those all the time. And kids they'd practice them at school, and then they would tell you, go home and practice a fire drill at home so you know where everyone goes, what tree you're supposed to meet up next to, just in case, God forbid, there's a fire at school or at home. Do the same thing with your kids if there's a situation at school. Walk them through what you expect of them if they have phones and how you want them to keep in touch with you or not if you truly are afraid of them being found.
And I apparently am just as big a dad nerd as you are because my kids even had a safe word.
Smart. That's very smart.
That if they would call, if they got the word into the conversation, and especially if it seemed kind of funny and it's not that it didn't belong in the context, but then I knew, oh, there it is. All right, I got to figure out where she is right now. Right now, I got to go find her.
That was a big thing I remember growing up. They encouraged their PSAs running all the time because it was so-and-so pretending to be an aunt, uncle, cousin, and they see someone walking home from school. Hey, your mom and dad are in an accident. They told me to come and get you. Well, if they told you to come and get me, you know what the safe word is.
And
what's the safe word? If they don't say it, you don't get in that vehicle.
And they wouldn't have, and that's how it was set up, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in the lovely words of Glinda, what a world, or the Wicked Witch of the West, what a world, what a world. It's true, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the things we have to prepare our kids for. And I'll take oxymorons for 200, Alex. Foster individuality at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. Now, we were kind of talking again before we got started about the governor's proposed bill, law, whatever it is, to keep kids off social media, specifically in the school. I have not looked into it much. What specifically is he saying about it?
Basically, it's the use of smartphones by students while at school or under the supervision of a school employee. So I'm guessing that while they're in the classroom, turn them off, put them in the bag.
Gotcha.
And I even created, you know what? I'm ready with a bumper sticker for it. Out of your hands, off your desks. I like that kind of, because that makes sense to me. But close enough.
Yeah, if you need it,
that if
it's
something
there.
goes wrong, it's turned off and in your bag. Cool. Because if something goes wrong at home, they'll call the school and they'll come get you.
That's how we did it back in the day.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in that situation, sorry, bad excuse, we'll find you.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's give the teachers a chance. I mean, they've got one of the hardest jobs in the world in my mind, and the most probably ADHD group of students in the world ever is probably now based on everything going on around everybody right now. And so God love them if they're able to hold their attention at all. Cell phones don't help. So I'm kind of in favor of the idea, but as always, I don't like the government telling me what to do. But in this case, this one doesn't seem horrible, and as long as the idea is to engender attention in school for the teacher trying to teach.
You almost wish, again, with that mindset of you don't like the government telling you what to do, that this hadn't come down from the governor's office, that this had been something that would be taken on by each school district, that the president of the school district, or whatever that title happens to be, they're the ones that say, hey, moving forward with this school year, in conjunction with whatever entity, body, whatever it happens to be, they make the decision supported by those on top.
That is kind of happening right now. LA City Schools just did do that.
Okay.
And I think what I really think is I think Governor Newsom's jumping on the bandwagon.
Okay.
I think that is slowly sort of happening quietly. I don't know what Tulare Unified is doing or what Visalia Unified is doing. But again, on the face of it, it does seem like a good thing, especially that's the dad in me. Uh-huh. Turn it off or I'll throw it away. Okay. And anyway, and by the way, Britt Floyd came to the Bakersfield Fox, and we went down to see them. It's the very best Pink Floyd, not imitation band,
cover
tribute
band.
Tribute. Truly tribute band. I mean, it's the exact same stage, the same thing up on the big circle up on the ceiling, everything. And right in the middle of the whole building shook like crazy. And I look at Colleen and I'm like, is this a special effect? I look up, the lights are swaying. I mean, like, we got to get out of here. It was an earthquake, Michael. Uh-huh. And it's the only time I've ever had a concert interrupted, but for just a minute. We all stopped. We walked out of the building for a minute. Are we going to live through this? Okay, we are. Went right back in. 3, 4, right back where they were, right to the end of the set.
So not actually stopping it and then everyone went home. Yeah. It was a
brief intermission that was just awesome because it looked like these guys were hitting the drums hard enough to shake the whole building.
Wow.
And as I've never seen Axl Rose, I've never seen a concert that just ended funny. Or sadly, the one time for Metallica when the pyrotechnics went awry, they had to stop that one. I'm glad I wasn't at that one, to be honest. I have such empathy. I would have felt so terrible for Mr. Hammett, or he was the one. It was the rhythm guitarist lead singer that got lit up, right?
James Hetfield is the lead singer.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
He got lit up.
Yeah.
And oh God, I just can't even imagine. That had to be the worst.
Yeah, if you haven't heard, I think I saw this on VH1 years ago, or I think it was VH1. The stories that they used to do, that apparently there was a pyrotechnic that went off very early on when Metallica was opening for Guns N' Roses. Mm-hmm. And Metallica could not go on. I mean, talk about a medical emergency.
No, he literally
second and third-degree burns over a good portion of his body.
He literally got blasted.
And someone either with the band or representative of went to Axl Rose, who, if I remember the story correctly, was actually sitting on a throne, smoking a cigarette, kind of getting in the right mindset for their set with Guns N' Roses, and said, there's been an emergency on stage. We need you to get up on stage and do maybe a little bit longer set, but at least get up there now. Refused to do it. Fans got wind of that, and they started tearing the place apart because of it.
That was the first time that Axled out, if you will.
Yeah.
And it was never necessary. He could have been a hero, man. He could have been a hero.
And I think they mentioned that as well. And I don't know, this was years ago that actually aired. I don't know if at some point they have talked and maybe Axl apologized because, I mean, that kind of was a jerk move.
I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, I get you want to be a rock guy and you want to be rock credible, but up to the point of public safety, I think, is the line where you stop.
Yeah, and that's where, again, Axl and Guns N' Roses could have been
huge
rock royalty. They were at that time anyway. I mean, again, this is a time when Metallica is opening for Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. I had 100% zero respect for him, and I don't think anybody did as a result. He didn't get any street cred from that. That was just, you're a jerk.
Yeah, I've never been to a concert where that's happened. The only thing that's happened, and this happens more and more concerts where there's no encore.
Yeah.
Which I understand. It still feels weird because a band will play all the way up until the time they have to stop for noise ordinance purposes. Because if you think about it, with an encore, that's 5 minutes of entertainment you are not getting because they go off stage, they kind of freshen up, get some water, and you're cheering for them, and it feels cool, but at the same time, there's no one on stage giving you what you paid for.
I paid for this, and my rule with Colleen is that no, it's okay, the lights are still on. The lights on the lights on the stage. If there's any, and I mean any, I mean one is enough. If there's any lights on the stage, they're still coming back. As soon as the lights come up on the stage, we got to go.
And okay, now let me ask you, in that situation, do you make the mad dash for the exit, or do you just kind of hang out and realize I'm going to be stuck in traffic in the parking lot anyway? I'm just going to wait for the first wave or two to go.
Unless the concert sucks, I'm never, let's go out on the last song. I like the music way too much. I want all of it. I want him to play 5 more songs. I'm going to.
And even just sitting there afterwards and kind of getting the vibe from the crowd and hearing what they're saying, I mean, and then talking with those around you.
That's part of it.
What did you think? And
that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're at the Save Mart Center. You know you're going to go out to the parking, get in your car.
Yeah.
It's going to be a mess. They're going to route you 6 miles the wrong way so you can come back safely to get onto the freeway on-ramp, which is 5 feet away from the Save Mart Center. But that's what they have to do to keep it safe. So I get it.
All right, so if you want to weigh in on that, again, that's a poll question that is up at my975fm.com. Have you ever been to a concert that was abruptly stopped for whatever reason?